Hello. Hello. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy almost Halloween. And welcome to Let's Talk Digital 360. My name is Elise Hanishek. I'm a senior manager here at Salesforce on the partner engagement team. And I get to work with awesome partners every day. One of them being Slalom, who we have as our guest speaker, Jim Clarke and Isaac Payne. So with that, I'm going to let our speakers introduce themselves. I'm going to let Isaac go first.
Yeah, hey everyone, welcome. Happy Friday. Happy almost Halloween. Like Elise said, I'm Isaac. I'm the Chief of Staff for Digital 360 Marketing. And so I spend a lot of my time, most of my time, focused on our go-to-market strategy for our digital products. That's Marketing Cloud, Experience Cloud, and Commerce Cloud. But I also work a lot with our product leaders and with our customers on those products. And then one of my favorite things that I get to do is to work with our partners, amazing partners like Jim and like Slalom. So I'll pass it over to you, Jim. Excited to be here.
Hey, thank you, Isaac. Hey, everyone. My name is Jim Clarke. I work for Slalom Consulting. I am one of the members running our digital 360 capability within the firm from a Salesforce perspective. If you don't know much about Slalom Consulting, we are an 8,000 plus consulting firm, hyper-focused on Salesforce as a platinum partner in everything digital 360. So I'm super excited as well to chat more.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
So to get us started, we're not going to get right into the content. We're going to have a few icebreakers here. And as a reminder, I want the audience to participate. So make sure to comment and chat as we ask some of these questions. So the first question, Jim, Isaac, and audience, on the theme of Halloween. What is your favorite Halloween candy?
Ooh. Oh man, Jim, I'm gonna let you take that one first. What do you think?
You know, I have a vice for a couple, but the one that if I find it in my kid's candy bag, it will probably disappear while they're sleeping is the Sour Patch gummies. I could eat a lot of those and then feel guilty tomorrow. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, look, I've been trying to get on the keto train. I don't really think it's working that well. My quarantine snack that I've been eating has been 4505 pork rinds. I can feel the judgment on LinkedIn right now. But it's really hard to snack when you're trying to do keto. So that's it for me, pork rinds.
There you go.
Yep.
You guys are both wrong because it's Reese's and you put them in the fridge, and that's the winner for sure for Halloween candy.
I love it.
All right, next question, next icebreaker. Favorite series you are currently binge watching?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So like everyone, I've been binging a lot during quarantine. And so for me, it's been House Hunters. I live in like a really, really tiny apartment in San Francisco. And so for the time being, I'm kind of living vicariously through these amazing, big, spacious homes.
It's always a reality check when someone's like, I've got this budget and they get this mansion. And you're like, are you kidding me?
Yep.
Well, for me, I have to give a shout out to our friends up north. I am doing my full rewatch of Schitt's Creek. So Daniel and Eugene Levy are just cracking me up over again, and I'm catching all those little nuances that you miss on the first pass. So that's my guilty pleasure for sure.
Good fan.
Awesome. I've started to rewatch Curb Your Enthusiasm from the start. So I'm on season 4.
Oh, and Lynn in the chat here, I just started watching the Queen's Gambit. I think that's the right way, and that is really good too, especially when she just starts stomping everybody in those tournaments like nobody's business. So that's a good one. I like it.
All right, our next question. If you could quarantine with any famous person, dead or alive, which would it be? They would be binge watching with you all these shows. But who would it be?
It might be embarrassing then. I'll go first. I can't take credit for it. I thought it was such an incredible idea from someone I work with. But I think in the world of what we're doing, like literally right now, like across the continent, Isaac and I are chatting. Can you imagine what like Da Vinci would think of the access to technology? I mean, he built a helicopter without even knowing what a helicopter was, as an example. I would think it'd be incredible to talk to him about like his brain with the technology available today. How about you, Isaac?
No, I love that. Man, mine feels kind of like pedestrian now that you mentioned Da Vinci, but for me, hands down, Anthony Bourdain. I reread Kitchen Confidential during quarantine, and like if you haven't read the book, there's a ton of great business insight in there as well. I don't think he would agree with my keto, but if there's one thing I've been doing a lot of right now, it's cooking a lot more for myself, and so I could really use some up leveling on my cooking game. So for me, it's Anthony Bourdain.
Like it. That's awesome.
All right, guys. So I think we've warmed the audience up, but as a reminder, make sure you guys are commenting, asking questions. We'll get to your questions at the end. But first, Isaac, we're going to do some myth busters here. So I have a few myths that I'm hoping you can bust for me. So let's go through the first one. Salesforce is just salespeople. True or false?
Oh man, this one really hurts my heart a little bit, given my role in the product that I work on. But I do hear this a lot. We started in Salesforce automation, and you could be forgiven for thinking that because our name is Salesforce. But over the past 21 years, we've moved kind of far beyond just those beginnings, that core DNA in Salesforce automation. And so with Salesforce Digital, that's actually exactly what we've done. We've brought together these market-leading technologies that are designed for marketers and commerce leaders and chief digital officers. And that's what digital is all about. So I'm going to have to bust that myth and say that one's false.
All right, next up. Customer 360 and Digital 360 are the same thing. True or false?
I guess if you put them together, it's like the digital customer 720 or something like that. Look, I think if you're familiar with Salesforce, then you know that we talk a lot about our customer 360. And if you're not, I'll just break it down real quick. Customer 360 is how you put the customer at the center of everything you do, from your sales process to your service process to the applications that you build and a whole lot more. But it's really about how you digitize your business around the customer. And with Digital 360, this is the part of Salesforce that is tailored to those digital leaders. And the key sort of difference between the two is with digital, it's about digitizing the relationship that you have with the customer. So integrating everything from the emails that you send to your website, to your e-commerce storefront. It's about putting that digital customer at the center of all the ways that you engage with them. So that's kind of the key difference. Again, I'm going to say it's false, myth busted. Let's go on to the next one.
I feel like the next time we do this, we need like a stamp that says.
Yeah, I think of the myth buster for sure.
All right, next myth. Customer 360 audiences and CDP are the same thing.
Yeah, you know what? This one's actually true. No need to bust the myth here. C360 Audiences, it's our customer data platform. We just GA'd it in October in this month. And so I'm really excited to get to talk a whole lot more about CDP with Jim here in a little bit.
Cool.
All right, final one. Digital is all about technology.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to go ahead and say it up front. This one's false. I want to bust this myth for everyone on the call. I think, look, it's really easy to think when you hear the word digital. I think it's easy to think about this as like a piece of hardware or a piece of software. But at Salesforce, we use a lot of our own technology, and we're trying to use it to solve a business problem. The formula that we have, it's technology, culture, and data. And so if you're going to go digital, for instance, if you're a manufacturer and right now you're thinking, how the heck do I get direct to the consumer? That's not just a technology decision, right? I mean, that's a fundamental business model change. And so it goes beyond just the technology. You have to have a culture, a purposeful culture, one that has, stated values. For instance, for Salesforce, one of our 4 key values is innovation. But more than just having values, it's about having a process for doing that change management, for having a reskilling process. How are you going to equip people? Because the jobs that we have today in the pandemic are fundamentally altered. a communication strategy as well, right? It takes a lot to make a change stick and to drive the adoption of technology. But of course, you also need the technology. And in addition to that, it comes down to data, right? How are you setting up systems and processes to get insights and to make course corrections? So for me, I think this one's false. I think it's all about technology, it's all about culture, and it's about data. So it's larger than just the tech.
Yeah, and Isaac, if I could, I think we talked about the the symmetry in us both having this proverbial triangle of what's truly like moving to digital. And within our firm, we have that same philosophy, right? It's like that you've got this technology, you have the people that are a part of your team, and then you have these processes. And I think that is the equation. If you don't have all three, despite the nomenclature changes, I think the overall concept is without all three, you really don't have a digital experience.
Completely agreed. Yeah.
So Isaac, maybe we could step into some more formal kind of Q&A, at least. So, we just mentioned CDP, C360 audiences in the scope of digital 360. What's your point of view on some kind of key considerations and some like what should be front and center of people's minds when they're thinking about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think CDP, it's a little bit of a buzzword, right? It's pretty hot in the market right now. And I think, fundamentally, it's really just an evolution of CRM, right? It's you can think of it as almost a CRM for marketers. But if I could take a step back, the question, when I think about CDP, the question that I think we have to ask ourselves is, as a digital leader, again, whether you're a CMO or you're in e-commerce, what are we trying to do with digital? And I think I would argue that what we're trying to do is build and deliver these really personalized digital experiences, these personalized moments, whether that's in the emails that you're sending or when someone goes onto your website or when someone's in your e-commerce store. You're trying to deliver these moments that maximize impact, whether it's acquisition or conversion or purchase or loyalty and beyond. And so for me, I think you can't do that without having a single source of truth, without having a unified profile, and then having a way to take that data and act on it and embed it in those experiences and personalize them using it. I think there's a ton of things that you have to consider when you're thinking about implementing a CDP. I'm really curious to hear, Jim, kind of your perspective on this, since you've worked with a lot of customers on it. So there's a lot to consider, but I would say the first thing, the most important thing, is really starting with privacy and starting with trust. I think upfront, before you're thinking about what am I going to do with this customer data, I would challenge you to ask yourself first, how are you going to maintain trust with the customer? And there's a lot of different components of that, right? There's actual formal regulations. If you're marketing in Europe, for instance, you're thinking about GDPR. Here in California, we have the CCPA. So there's a regulatory aspect to it. But I think more fundamentally, what is your plan for managing opt-ins, managing opt-outs, managing consent? We do a lot of research at Salesforce, and we just released a report that we call the State of the Connected Customer. It's about 15,000 respondents that we survey across consumers and businesses. And what we hear, and we hear this time and time again, is 65% of customers have stopped buying from a brand because they do something distrustful. And I think we all have experiences, right? The creepy Instagram ads and things like this that happens in our personal lives. So I think where I would recommend everyone starts is, again, what is your plan for maintaining trust? And I think that's what separates the good brands from the poorer performers is upfront. They have it documented, they have policies, they have a plan for privacy and trust before they implement the technology. That's my recommendation. And what about you?
I would tend to agree. I think there's a couple of things that have happened. The digital and everyone focusing on digital has definitely removed a lot of those traditional barriers, right? The whole, well, I have a retail, experience, or I have this experience, like everyone's kind of on an equal playing field. So kind of what the people that are lagging are, you can't be resting on your laurels. Touching on the question directly, you went through a bill of material of stress for anyone that's building something like this, right? Of like, How do we maintain privacy? How do we have opt-ins? How do we have interactions visible? And so we didn't even address the typical MarTech map that shows 8,000 other applications that could be making this even more convoluted. And so where my head always goes back to is like, if you're thinking about something like the C360 audiences, you really need to sit down as a team and detail out the requirements and why do you have this as a requirement and how important it is, so that when you are going through this implementation and thinking through it, everyone's centered. It's not as emotional. There's kind of this consensus of these are the things that are important to us now in our space of our digital journey. That would be that would be my gut, is like start at square one of writing down those requirements and seeing how they land with the overall team outside of just your ecosystem, of course, right? Get into service, get into marketing, get into commerce, and get everyone to feedback on it. I personally, we've gotten a ton of responses on Candy and whether or not Game of Thrones is the best. But I would love if anyone on the audience, kind of feels the same in regards to that focus of the digital and how important that's been in this year's. And anyone want to give a shout out on the chat about that?
I'm seeing so much. I would just say too, one thing that I would throw out there, and I'm seeing some great recommendations on keto. So thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for giving me some snack options so I can get off of pork rinds. I would say too, as a marketer, I mean, I think you're right, Jim. I think really use cases, it's a really great way to think about before you do a big tech implementation, having thought of that kind of upfront. Because I think about it, I mean, I'm in a marketing department, and what I hear and see a lot of marketers are having to do right now is to be hyper focused on ROI, right? If you're gonna justify spending time and resources and money, that's when I'm thinking about how do I build that business case to my stakeholders. That's definitely been a lens that I've seen other customers use as we're thinking about implementing, again, whether it's an email marketing solution or whether it's CDP. So yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree, like start with the key use cases and think about what that means in the context of your business, right? Especially people that you're gonna have to get on board to help you out with making that decision. And I would ask you, Jim, so I'm just curious, like, we talked a lot about digital right now. Why do you think it's so important? And then what do you think and why is the role of a partner critical in the success of digital?
Yeah, it's funny is I don't think this digital experience has been new, right? It's been something we've been talking about for 5 years and maybe probably before then, right? As there's people that are like, I remember the last conference, and blah, 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 that was that. But I think what's really changed is whether it's February or March or January for some of us, digital became the most important priority. I think we all walked into the calendar year and said, like, we've got all these great plans we're doing, and then just threw it out the window, right? And so I think, based off the chat, I'm sure there's tons of people that have had that same aspect, but when everyone is moved to digital in the same time period with the same urgency, with the sink or swim mentality, it's kind of just changed the entire focus. And so where I feel, directly to answer your question, the aspect and the value of a partner like Slalom is really like, does a partner know the context and the brand standards and how you value your interaction with the customers? Absolutely no. Like, that's why you're the experts in the field from our client's perspective. But what we have seen is, we've done the transformation several times in that month with other clients in the vertical. We have the framework, we have a pattern, we know where, like, what to avoid, tackling first versus second. And so under that proverb of, why do you want to recreate the wheel? I think that's the simplest way of saying, working with a partner that can help guide you through those different frameworks. And then, at what stage you are in that digital transformation is the value add and the harmony of working together.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think it's funny you mentioned just kind of throwing out the game plan and changing it. I think back to February, which feels like years ago at this point, and I was actually on a stage in London, kind of kicking off our amazing marketing plan for the year. And then less than a month later, I was like, well, I'm gonna have to redo all of that, I guess. So yeah, totally, that definitely resonates with me. Yeah, I think I would agree in terms of just the speed of digital transformation, the acceleration that we've seen. And I think, Jim, like you said, really every customer relationship today, it's not just, for all first digital, it's really all digital today, right? And I think we've been really fortunate at Salesforce in that we have this huge e-commerce platform. We have this very large set of products from marketing. And so we have gotten a really front row seat at a lot of the data and this kind of surge that we've seen in everything from spend online to buy online and pick up in store. And so in Q2, we actually just released our Q3 shopping index. So check that out at Salesforce. And the short of it is we've seen digital spend really we've seen it just skyrocket, right? The kind of talk track is people are pulling in 5 years worth of digital transformation in the past 5 months. And I think we see that bear out really in the data. And so I think what I would say is that there's just never been a set of technology. There's never been a set of strategy that is more important or more relevant right now than the world that we're living in. And I think as far as partners go, I 100% would echo what you just said. And I think we should be clear, like, no one has had a perfect playbook for COVID, right?
Wait, Isaac, are you telling me that you haven't managed a pandemic before personally?
No, I haven't. I was not around 1918. I don't think the internet was either. But yeah, I mean, no one's had a playbook for this, and so I think there are a lot of amazing technology vendors and partners like Slalom who we've been on the front lines working with customers, working with state governments, federal governments, people who are trying to fundamentally reinvent their business and launch a new business model. And so I think that the thing is that those vendors, those partners, we've had a lot of learnings, right? We've collected a lot of resources on how to do digital right now. And so I think what I would say is whether you're a small business or you're in the Fortune 500, you're not alone in trying to figure out how do we be successful? How can we thrive in the world that we live in? And so I think, at Salesforce, we try to make sure that every customer, every prospect, they've got access to those best practices. You can go on to trailhead.com right now. It's our learning platform. We have a ton of free resources. But then we also work with amazing partners, like you, to help give that expertise for implementation and process and change management. So I think the role of a partner is just really, really critical. So I would like to maybe switch gears here a little bit, Jim. I mean, I know y'all Slalom, you get to work with a lot of customers. So I would love if you could just walk everyone on this in this conversation through just an example of a customer that you've worked with, one who's had to really accelerate going digital right now. So I'd just love to hear kind of a real life example.
Real life. I think the way we teed this up, right, is we said, like, we all had this plan going in, and then, it's changed. And I think one of my favorite example and a great client of ours is based out of Montreal with Group Dynamite. When the pandemic hit, we were right in the throes of doing a Commerce Cloud implementation for them and working through, the traditional pattern of how you would, stand up this commerce, what's in the backlog, et cetera. And then we had to shift, and the shift was like overnight, right? Many retailers had to just shutter doors. North America is a big footprint for the brand, and that was a massive change. And so what I think we're particularly proud of as a firm is how great Group Dynamite and the team not only did the same implementation as planned, but actually refactored that entire first release to be focused on that move to digital. So like small things like return to store, digital printout, shipping labels, those items that are kind of in the back of most of those implementations moved front and center, made it out on the first release. And then, as of today, they're really kind of honing in on, what is the C360 vision for the customer in that digital perspective that they have, which is inclusive. And this goes back to that data challenge, and the challenge or the fun part is like Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud, Service Cloud, that connected experience, getting all the plumbing right. I'm personally really excited to see what happens in the next couple of months, but I think they just were rock stars on getting that out the door in the middle of the pandemic, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, I love that example. I mean, I think everyone, we've all kind of encountered this in our personal lives, right? I mean, retail has been fundamentally impacted by COVID, but I think equally so, I think there are companies in manufacturing, in the high tech space, even in financial services and healthcare and life sciences, who are all trying to figure out how do you go digital and how do you be successful. So I'm curious, is there any sort of key learning that you had in working with Group Dynamite, something that you think might be repeatable or a pattern that you would expect other people, kind of regardless of their industry, that they're going to encounter when they try to do this? So what sort of one key learning or pattern that you would pass along for others to think about?
Yeah, we could maybe throw up this illustration we were thinking about, but I would say the key thing is no one's going to be in the same place, right? And think about the framework of how to assess where you're at. And so, at Slalom, what we really focus on is you could have certain things already baked out. You could have your personas or segments identified. You may have a few customer journeys that you can dust off. You may have KPIs that you're tracking through, but I think the key learning that we have as a firm when we're thinking about Digital 360 is really working on a framework that not only drives the experiences that you're seeing from a quantitative and qualitative perspective, but also making sure that everyone that is going through this exercise represents the full end-to-end, from the awareness to the retention and advocate champion phase of the life cycle is involved in the process. And so I would say if there's any kind of key lessons is to make sure it doesn't have to be, boiling the ocean. You don't have to address everything. You need to address what you can handle as a team, but really, identifying those critical points in your customer experience, how you would measure it and what you want to go forward with on changing it. And the reason why I said bring everyone there is from a consulting point of view, I would say that's almost always one of the bigger challenges is things are done in silos and things are done by one team, but not the other team. And it can't happen. Like when you're thinking about Digital 360, you have to break those silos down. You have to work together and you have to prioritize the different integrations, the different people, the different processes all around this future experience you want to have. And so we find that a framework like what I showed there is really that starting point of what I would recommend, from our lessons learned.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point for everyone to kind of take in. I think it can be hard, especially if at a very large company. It can be hard to kind of play ringleader and kind of bring together multiple departments. And I mean, even at Salesforce, we're going through our own digital transformation where we're implementing CDP. And it's being led by our chief marketing officer, but we've got stakeholders in our business technology, our IT team. We obviously have stakeholders in sales. And so I think the success of that project, it totally hinges on getting leadership alignment, but then getting the people in those various departments, IT, sales, marketing, product, getting all of those folks together. It's 100% what's gonna make that successful or make it not successful. So I definitely agree. And then I would say at Salesforce we've been really fortunate again just to partner with a lot of customers who are going through this challenging time. And I think if we want, we can maybe pull up. We've got a little framework, a way that we think about it at Salesforce. So I think the reality is, look, most, if not almost all, of how your customer engages with your brand, engages with your services, it's all online, right? And so what companies are trying to do is to put that digital customer at the center of the experience that they deliver, right? The center of email to website to the actual purchase. And so I think broadly, these are sort of the main categories, the main way that we see customers thinking about implementing Digital 360. And it's everything from how you drive awareness to your offerings, to your products, right? We're having to do this almost entirely online, right? With social ads, with content on our websites. We're trying to increase conversions and purchases on our websites and on our e-commerce storefronts. And then ultimately, we're wanting to make sure that we drive loyalty and repeat purchases. So broadly speaking, I would say this is how customers are thinking about digital. But I think, Jim, like you said almost before, I think where you start on this journey, that's obviously a lot of potential, right? You could start and do the whole thing, but I think where you start, it goes back to what your most pressing use case is. If you're a retailer and you've lost 90% of your distribution channels, then you got to start selling online and figure out how to do that. So I would just go back to the recommendation we're talking about earlier of, start where your most pressing need is. And that, I think, is kind of the key to be successful.
And it's interesting is like we talk about the start and like how do you get around it. I think the other challenge people say is it's almost a catchphrase, right? Of like, how do I future-proof this, and how do I and what when someone tells you that, because I know you speak to a lot of clients out there and awesome brands, like what's your philosophy on that mantra of future-proofing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I would go back to what I said earlier, which is, no one has had a playbook for this. So yeah. I think anyone who tells you that they know with 100% accuracy, what's coming next, I would be very skeptical of that. Having said that, I think the way I would answer that is it goes back to what I went through in the Mythbusters. And so we actually recently did an interview with Ken Daly. He's the global head of direct-to-consumer and e-commerce at PopSockets. You probably know them for their Pop Grip products that a lot of people have on the back of their phones. We asked him this exact same question. We said, look, who knows what's coming next? How do you think about future-proofing your business? And I think his answer would be verbatim what I would say, which is two things. One, he said, I've got this mantra that I tell my team, which is move fast, break things, and always be in beta. And so the way that I think about that is it does, in that answer, it kind of comes back to culture. It comes back to making sure that you've got a core value of maybe you call it always be in beta, maybe you call it innovation, but having that value where you're encouraging people to move fast, to break things, and to always have that mindset of this is beta. We have to launch, we have to learn, we have to iterate. And that, to me, I think when I think about customers that I've spoken with, when I think about also at Salesforce, how we are trying to always be on the cutting edge of not just technology, but how we use our own technology. Obviously, the technology side of it is important, but I think it does come back to what Ken said. I think it's about having that culture that is thinking about, look, innovation, it's going to require failure comes baked into innovation. And if you have a culture that pushes back against taking risk, that punishes people for getting data and thinking about, okay, maybe this is telling me to go in a different direction. If you have a culture that doesn't encourage that, I don't think, regardless of your technology, I don't think you're going to be able to future-proof your business. That'd be my answer. I'd be curious, Jim, what yours would be.
I like that quote. I think that the challenge people have, right, is they think that we have to solve it in one plan, right? And I think that's even in the illustration that I showed, that's today's plan, right? And I think what's important is to be comfortable with that change, like what you said, is like whether it's always being beta or whatnot. But one addition I'd recommend is when you have that plan, you need to have those annotations of how you're measuring the success, right? And so whether that's, like service queues or how fast we're able to do a replacement, or like those KPIs are where you want to be able to do iteration. And so I 100% agree that you cannot boil the ocean. It's impossible. I gave the example of Group Dynamite. They're iterating, right? And so I would encourage people to, when they go through that big alignment exercise and really understand the customer, is they identify like what are those key measurements we want to have and where are those measurements sourced. So there's trust in the measurement, so that you can be disruptive and you can mix things up and see what works and what doesn't. But otherwise, I think there's three of us agree on the same mantra.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And I think, and that I would say too, that I know we're talking about data a couple of times here, it doesn't have to be super sophisticated or complex. I think it starts even as simple as just, having a focus group with customers, right? Polling customers, thinking about just very simple ways of tracking, is this effort successful or not? If you don't have some way to flag that, to capture it, I think it's gonna be difficult to succeed without that. And again, I think it can be as simple. You don't have to go into very sophisticated AI ML stuff, right? We're talking pretty simple stuff of a poll, a focus group. So I would also, into your point about like bite-sizing this almost, I would think the same way when it comes to data and how you're capturing that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, this has been a great Q&A. I'm curious if Elise wants to see if we've had any questions come in from the field that we could maybe take a pause and help out on.
Or more keto snack advice. I would appreciate more.
Or like, questions about Da Vinci, keto, candy bars.
Right.
So we've had a few things come in on the chat. First one, does the process of managing opt-outs, ins, and considering user privacy benefit more from the features development team than the legal team?
Let me see if I understand the question. Maybe I don't understand it perfectly. I would say, when it comes to, I'll give you the example of how we think about trust and privacy at Salesforce. I think, clearly we have a large legal department, and we want to make sure that we are being, compliant with major regulations. So implementing that in our emails to how you sign up for stuff on our website, obviously benefits our legal team. But I would say, from a marketing perspective, Adam Blitzer, who's our GM of digital, he said something that kind of stuck with me, which is take the most restrictive policy out there. I think GDPR is a good example, and have that be your global policy for marketing. So I think as a marketer, I'm concerned with growing our database, growing our customers, and if we're violating trust time and time again, that's going to catch up with us. Not just from a regulatory perspective, but from a marketing perspective, from our users' perspective. So I think it's not really an either or. I think it's both. I think our legal department obviously benefits from it, but I think we as marketers, we absolutely do as well.
Yeah. All right. Next question here. And Jim, if you want to answer it first, and then Isaac, I'll give you a chance.
Sure. What
gets you most excited about this expedited shift to digital?
Ooh.
Most excited. That's for me, the thing that Isaac laments about being an old Pardot guy. I'm an old exact target guy. I always have thought that the data is the Achilles heel of a customer experience. And so I think that digital and all of a sudden it being front and center in 100% of the ecosystem is going to drive better data connectivity, such as C360 audiences. Like that's great to see that come to life. So I'm excited about that. And then maybe the things I'm nervous about is like, how do we really hone in on the people and process, because they're all kind of slamming in the door so fast. So I gave you the two sides of what keeps me up at night and what makes me happy, I guess.
Yeah, no, I love that answer. I think I get excited about all things digital, so I got to pick just one that's kind of tough, I would say. I think for me, it's just been the acceleration that we've seen. I think there's been a lot of companies, if you think back 5-10 years ago, who were super reticent to make this transition. And I think it's really exciting to get to see hardware manufacturers all of a sudden rush all in on selling online and servicing customers online and engaging with customers online. So I think I've been in the business for a little bit. I've never seen just such an acceleration like what we're seeing toward digital.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's seeing people reinvent their business models, seeing people have resiliency in one of the most challenging times that I've ever been in, I'm sure most people have ever been in. And so seeing businesses and governments and other institutions like step up and go digital, I think it's really exciting to see that transformation.
Yeah, I got to pile on, Isaac. I think it's cool, very much so, that even at the local, minute level, all the way to the public sector. I mean, I had a restaurant that I was so excited has been doing well, where they're even selling gloves and masks because they can get it at a bulk discount through wholesalers, and they changed their whole website to like offer that to the community. And I was like, it's cool to see some people just going and being so creative outside of their lane. And I think that's another element that we're experiencing as a community.
Yeah, exactly.
I have another question for you, but first, Jim, you got a shout out. Awesome Lego Hogwarts castle.
7. So we all had this plan that, this is going to be just for the winter and we'll go do something fun. And so I bought that thing thinking my kids and I would actually work on it, and it ended up I just got really mad and just finished it, and I'll never buy a 7,000 piece Lego set again. But you got to do something with it, and it barely fits on the shelf. So Kevin, I appreciate it, my friend. It was a lot of work, I'm not going to lie.
All right. So here's another question. What are three tips do you have for helping digital leaders take their customer relationships to the next level?
Oh man. Yeah, I'm happy to maybe start off on it, and then Jim, if you want to add on or tag on. I think, my hope would be, if you've kind of sat through this conversation, I hope that you're able to walk away with more than just 3 sort of tips. But I think if I had to boil it down, I think, I mentioned, and Jim mentioned, kind of starting with your use cases and having that outline. I think there's a lot of process that you can take into account. If I were going to make an even bigger bet, I do think that starting with the data around your customer is like one of the first places to start. I think everything else is kind of a channel, right? Or a tactic where you're going to actually reach out to a customer, whether, again, it's your website or it's your email campaigns. So for me, I would say definitely start and think about starting with data, unifying it, having one place where you're able to activate it. The second thing I would say is, and I know I've probably hit this a couple times, but I really can't reiterate enough the importance of having very clearly and purposefully stated a culture. We spend a lot of time on it at Salesforce in particular. We spend a lot of time and effort on very clearly articulating, these are our values. This is what's important for this company. I mentioned innovation. That's a key value, whether you're in product or you're in engineering or you're in marketing, where all of us are always thinking about, does what I'm doing align to that value of innovation along with our other values? So I really would say, from outside of a technology perspective, I think really starting at the top, if you're a digital leader, being clear about your intent, being clear about your values, and then not just having values, but making sure that people know them, that you're communicating to your teams about it. That, to me, I think are those 2 things kind of coupled together, I think are the most important pieces and tips that I would give to customers.
Yeah, I would pile on a little bit, maybe not for 3, but I would say be okay with also finding a company you aspire to be like. Right. And it doesn't have to be in the same vertical, but I've seen some great examples with clients we've worked with where they're like, we love this experience. We want to replicate it. We want to use it as our North Star. I think that's super important in digital because those interactions are so similar now. So I would recommend that. And then, as Isaac said, is give it time to go through the process. Like, there's a lot of there's so much pressure on us all. Like I think we all have like 6 to 7 hours of meetings every day some days. Yeah, carve out the time to go through the process. You will get so much more value of being thoughtful than just rushing and turning something on for the sake of turning it on. So that would be my 1.5 or 2 points to pile on there if I could.
I think we got 3.
Nice.
Good.
Yeah. Close enough.
Yeah, close enough.
All right, guys. There's one more question. I think it's actually a good one to kind of end on, but where can we go to learn more about Digital 360?
Oh,
yeah. I think from a Salesforce perspective, salesforce.com, if you go to our solutions page, we have a whole section called Digital, and it's all about resources and content, really tailored for someone who's in a marketing role, a CMO, et cetera. I'd also say Trailhead. I called out Trailhead earlier in the conversation. But if you're looking to get hands-on, you want to get hands-on with CDP and Salesforce's CDP specifically, Trailhead's a place to go, and you're going to be able to spin up an actual environment, get hands-on with the technology. So those would be my 2. our website, and then Trailhead.
Yeah, I would say, I grew up in the developer life a little bit. I liked Trailhead, and I also like to go to the release notes. So I think going through, I said, like, get those requirements documented and start reading through release notes, what's on the roadmap, and get jazzed about what can work with some of your needs. I'll also make a little plug is I would love to talk to anybody, so I think, Elise, if you get the chance here to throw up a little link to engage, I think having a conversation about this is my passion, and that I think both Isaac and I love talking to this digital space, but I think, a one-on-one conversation around what people are up to and what they think would be great as well. So at least you're hitting mute.
Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Actually, one more question that snuck in here, and
Yeah.
I think we have time. So, is it assumed to be an offering kit digital 360, i.e. commerce, experience, marketing by a good price, then having it separately?
Yeah, I think from an actual purchase perspective of digital, the way that we've approached it is, we're not. Imagine you're a restaurant and you say, hey, you have to eat the entire menu. You can't pick and choose what you want or what you need right now. And so with digital, again, it depends on what your key sort of use case is, right? And so again, if it's commerce or if it's marketing, then you're able to kind of think about, well, let me start with that piece of it. So that's the way we've kind of structured it. And then I would also say, we have everything from sort of our free content online with Trailhead, with customer success groups, a ton of content, but also we have a huge customer success team that is here to support you with digital, and they have very specific offerings as well. And then of course we have our partners who can help you out with the whole enchilada or just kind of individual pieces of it.
Awesome. All right. Well, can we get this slide back up, Ellie, for the URL for?
Yeah, maybe Ellie, just throw it in the comments section if you get a chance. But Isaac, I'll start us off. I've had a great chat. Maybe I can't see Isaac, so maybe we can pull the image off. But this was fun. I mean, this is par for the course. We're all meeting digitally, so I know we've met maybe in passing, but it's been a fun chat, and I love hearing more about Digital 360 and your point of view on it. So thank you, and Elise as well, for being part of it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would echo exactly what you just said. I think it's been a really fun conversation. I think I really can't think of a better way to jump into my Halloween weekend and my pork rind candy that I'll be chomping on. Maybe, although I've learned some tips, so maybe I'll change that up. But yeah, huge thanks to you, Jim, and to Slalom, and to Elise, and to others. It's been a great conversation. I hope for everyone on the call that it was useful, that you're able to get something out of it. And like Jim said too, I would echo, I love having conversations about digital. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So chat me, reach out to me too. I'm happy to continue a conversation.
Yeah, great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great Friday.